The story that we're calling God Showed His Power to Pharaoh is a story that begins in Exodus chapter 5 and runs through chapter 12, verse 32, when Pharaoh finally grants permission for the Hebrew people to leave Egypt. In these chapters, God demonstrated His power to Pharaoh through a series of plagues and other catastrophes that ultimately brought Pharaoh to his knees and forced him to say yes, the people can leave. So it's a familiar story, many people know about it, and it's another of those stories that children need to know about. It's really the beginning of the Exodus story, and it's how God brought about the Exodus through these plagues and catastrophes. 3 points that I think are significant as you teach this story to kids. The first is that God is God over all people, over all nations, and He's over all the gods that we create along the way. This would become a foundational conviction for the Hebrew people in the Old Testament and in the Bible. All of God's people understand that however He may act, however silent He may appear, our God is a big God who is God over all other gods, and He's not just God of the Hebrews, He's God of all people. All people ultimately are subject to Him and must answer to this God of the Bible. The second point I would make in this text, or this narrative, is that God demonstrates His power in His timing and for His purposes. I'm sure along the way, 400 years of slavery, these people were wondering, where is God and what is He doing? Why isn't He acting on our behalf? But He chose not to act until this particular point in time for His own purposes. We can't always understand His timing, but His timing is good, and His purposes are good. And so He will act and work in our lives and in the lives of in the world around us in accordance with His purposes and His timing. So that's an important point to make. And finally, I would make the point that God's plan and purposes for us include the long-term welfare and benefit of His people because He loves them. He loves us. And while we may wonder at times where He is and what He's doing, the fact is He always loves us. He does have a plan, and ultimately that plan, just like His plan for the people of Israel, was to bring about their best, their good. He wants what's good for us because He loves us, and therefore He acts, He works in history, He works in our lives because ultimately He loves us and cares about us. 3 very important points to make in this wonderful, amazing story.